Hello, and welcome to Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and I have been so looking forward to having this conversation with my guest today. And I know that you are going to enjoy it as well, especially for anyone who has ever done anything within the parish. You've helped out at the barbecue, you've run a ministry, whatever it is. I know that you're going to benefit from this. So, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I very much appreciate it.
Of course, great to be here.
Yeah. So before we jump in and start talking about the things that you have been doing, particularly your book, would you share with our listeners just a little bit about your own faith journey and how you kind of came to be where you are today?
Sure. So I was born Catholic. I was pretty into it my whole life. Um, and I guess, around middle school or so, I kind of started stepping back. Started taking my faith for granted. And the story I like to tell is I remember, a lot of people have their adoration experience, their retreat experience, the mountaintop experience. I remember my first one. I was in eighth grade and we went on a retreat, and I was like, wow, if that was real, if that experience I had was truly God, I need to change everything about how I'm living my life. And so I decided that it wasn't real and I was going to ignore it. And and then that
I
following
think we
year,
all do.
yeah, that following year was tough, and it kind of gave me an idea of what my life would be like without God. And it kind of I think he withdrew himself from me on purpose, to kind of let me understand the good things in my life weren't necessarily mine. And then a year later at another retreat, I had that similar experience, and it was kind of God saying like, "Hey, like let's try this again." And I think that was really where I recommitted myself to making my faith my own, and walking on the spiritual life for His sake, not necessarily just because it was what I always did. And
Mhm.
so those experiences led me to rededicate my life to the church and want to seek out theology as a life path, like just studying theology, working at the church. And I thought that was going to be my entire life forever, was like working for churches and working in church world and all that stuff. And it's interesting, my life path kind of went off that road and has kind of circled back. So that's where the book came in, right? I spent
Mhm.
about 4 years working in church ministry officially, but 8 years before that, studying theology, doing retreats, working at parishes with like Franciscan, which is where I went to college. And when I had to leave that, it was unfortunate. It was kind of a crisis of like, what am I going to do now? Like, am I still serving the church in the same way? And since leaving, I think I've done more for my home parish than I did in those 4 years, just
Mhm.
in like help, not just helping out and getting involved, but also just living life with other families and helping my friends, and starting things with them and all that stuff. And so my that's what kind of led me to write the book, was this experience of, oh wow, I'm doing exactly what I was doing 4 years ago, but I'm doing it in a way that's much more commensurate with my state of life. I'm not, acting like like a paracleric, as many
Mhm.
people that work for churches kind of act by nature of the job. And I'm doing the mission of the church as a layperson should. And so I wanted to capture that because I thought that was a gap in church improvement books. There was really nothing for like lay people to work in
Mhm.
their parish.
No, I completely understand, and I want to re-emphasize the what I run into on especially on a one-on-one level in spiritual mentorship and direction with people is that they'll talk to me and say, "Oh, my heart really is that I really want to go and do X in the neighborhood, but I'm not helping my church." And I'm like, "Okay, broader understanding of church."
Of parish, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not the institution, it's the people, and
mhm,
that was a huge mindset shift that fortunately I had early on in my time working in parish ministry, because I was working in Pittsburgh where the parishes were merging. And
mhm,
so the idea of the parish as the institution was in flux already, because people were like, well, we're juridically united, but I don't feel like I'm part of the same people as this
mhm.
person, even though we're like juridically in the same parish. So what does this mean? And that was interesting. That was an interesting experience. It definitely helped form my understanding of what a parish is.
Yeah. And I think it really is key. My husband and I, we moved 10 years ago to the community where I still am. And it's something where we're the only parish for 45 miles.
Oh
You,
wow.
you literally have to drive almost an hour to get to another parish. And that's where it's kind of like, hey, you know, where you are, your neighborhood, your, what, the kids' soccer team, that's where you're called to be ministering.
Yeah.
And to gather with people and for them to see that you're living your faith, and that has more of an impact than we realize. So I very much appreciated, as you said, you hadn't seen it in books out there talking about improving parish life and community and ministry, and being attentive to that. So I did appreciate that. I wanted to stop because you you talk about, hey, your life path kind of went a little different direction, and one of those was, you state yourself that you're a former comedian. How
Oh
where'd
yes.
that come from?
So that was a period of my life from, interestingly enough, high school through like the end of college. Anything you do in high school needs to be, it's not exactly professional, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when I was in high school, I was doing theater and I was like, you know what, I want to try stand-up
Mm-hmm.
comedy. And so I tried it at a talent show at my school and I failed utterly. And my friend was like, you have to like practice that. You can't just get up and do it. And I was like, okay. So I looked around for like open mics, and the only open mic in town that would let me do comedy was at a 21 and up pool hall
Mm-hmm.
in town. And so I look old for my age, and so I went in and no one told me to leave, and so I kept doing stand-up comedy. Um I guess technically I could have been in there at 18, but I let slip my age one time, and the organizer of the event was like, "You're 17 years old." I started doing it, and he's like, "Yes," and he was like, "Not anymore. You are 21. Do not ever say
Mm-hmm.
your age." And so I was good enough to at least for him to break the rules. Um,
Mhm,
but yeah, I did that for a couple of years and got paid for it. It was fun. Never like
mhm.
anything serious money, but
Right.
to a teenager, it felt like serious money.
Mhm,
And that's again, show business is where I thought my life was going to be for a little while, and
mhm,
I'm glad that I didn't go down that road because I have friends that do it, and I don't envy them at all.
mhm,
Their schedules are crazy. I was interviewing a friend who does stand up comedy nationally, and he's like, we were interviewing him, and it was like 9 o'clock, and he's like, all right, sorry, I got to go do a show, and I was like, it's 9 o'clock. You have a show at 9 o'clock? He's like, no, I have a show at 10:30 p.m. I'm like, jeez,
mhm.
all right.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Mhm,
But yeah, that was a fun part of my life. I think it really prepped me for youth ministry.
mhm.
Because if you can handle a bunch of drunk people in a bar, you can handle middle schoolers pretty easy.
I would agree with that assessment.
They have a lot.
Um,
The Venn diagram is real big, you know?
did that experience lead to your, as you say, um, mistakenly or accidentally starting a podcast, which is now
Yes.
10 years old, is it?
Yeah, so it's turning 10 in September. I started a podcast which was called The Crunch until about a year and a half ago with my
Hmm.
friend Ethan, and it always was like a comedy and religion podcast. Like we always had it listed under both
Hmm.
because, we were 19 when we started it. And there's not much like life advice a 19-year-old can give or like catechetical instruction that a the 19-year-old can give. But what we can do is we can talk about Catholic life in a way that's kind of funny. And so that's what we leaned into. And then we changed the name to Bro Apostles because that sounded funnier than the Crunch and kind of communicated that it's Catholic.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that was a mistakenly begun podcast by a friend we met through Twitter, and our first conversation was our first episode of our podcast.
Hmm.
And the friendship grew, and now we're buds. We were in each other's weddings, and we've been doing it for 10 years.
Hmm. But again, it goes back to what we were just talking about, which is the reality of what God places into our lives, and we do faithfully and we bring our best to it and we do it. It has an impact because
Hmm.
you guys have over 1 million downloads. And I mean, so you actually have impacted people and given them an insight into what Catholic life is like,
Yeah.
which we need a lot of that because there's so many misconceptions out there, and misunderstandings. So I'm glad that you are doing it. If someone hadn't heard of it, Bro Apostles, why do you think they should check it out? Mm.
Well, if they're on the younger side and they like they like listening to people talk about Catholicism, but they want it to be funny, that's why I would have them listen to it. If you're looking for if you're looking for more instructional or more like catechetical stuff,
Hmm.
you might get something out of Bro Apostles, but it's a little like that's not the point. Um, we answer questions from young Catholics about Catholic life, and a lot of that's dating, a lot of that's how do I start a young adult group in my church, what do
Hmm.
I do at work, marriage advice. And so we'll answer questions absolutely, but we definitely riff on the questions, make fun, joke, we'll start answering a question and get sidetracked. So if you like those kinds of podcasts where it sounds like you're sitting down for lunch with a bunch of friends, like that's the energy we try to capture. We want to give you that on your commute, on your
Hmm.
plane ride. We don't recommend listening to it in gyms or libraries because you will laugh and drop the weights or laugh and disturb the other patrons. That's what we've heard. Don't listen to it at the gym or at the library.
Oh, that's great. But I do know that my audience does include those young Catholics,
Mhm.
young adult Catholics you're talking about. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go in and do so.
I'd be
Um,
honored. Thank you for
yeah,
checking it out. Yeah.
no, not at all. And we need to be serious, but not about ourselves, I think is, one of your
Yeah.
taglines. Um, so your book, Save Your
Mhm.
Parish, and I see you got a copy there for anybody who's watching on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
The little visual aid there. But could you share a little bit of the story? You made reference to it, and that you'd worked in ministry, and but what was it that really became the genesis and the driving motivation for you that I got to do this? Mhm.
So for me, it was I opened the book with what I saw in Pittsburgh, and that was the Diocese of Pittsburgh went through a very large merger when I started working in the diocese. So Pittsburgh borders Steubenville, and that's where I went to college. So that's where I ended up. I had a bunch of friends there, and I started my church, my ministry job, and we were 7 parishes merging into one, and that was the biggest merger at the time. But other dioceses in the area, in that Rust Belt part of the country, like I think Cincinnati or Columbus went from 200 parishes to 75 or something crazy, like that small of a reduction. Um, and so I saw that happen, and my heart was broken for those people because, they had these neighborhood churches that they grew up at. St. Lucy's got merged into St. Vitus and now, or into St. Vincent de Paul. And now Vincent de Paul is merging with 4 other parishes nearby. And now those 4 parishes are merging it was 27 parishes that merged down to 7, then merged down to 1 for an entire county. And
Mm,
I saw the suffering that was happening there. And we did our best to kind of pool the resources and try to stop the bleed. And I think we did a really good job. After the book was released, one of the parishioners from my old parish said, "Hey, the ministry that we started, and it was we, like I didn't do it, she did it.
mhm,
The ministry we started, we finished our cold calling, all the families that were on our register, we did all our door knocking, and we brought 300 families back to the church.
mm,
Amazing, right? After the book came out, she told me about that.
mhm,
But that time in ministry, I moved back home and I looked around and I was like, oh my gosh, you guys don't realize how bad it is everywhere else.
mm,
You guys don't realize how they felt 50 years ago is how we feel now. Like, let's look a couple of decades in the future and see what might be coming on the pike unless we change some things, right? Um, and so that was kind of the motive for me to do it was like I want to put stuff in place here now that will stop that from happening. But also, I wanted to give people tools because what I saw in Pittsburgh was a lot of Catholics who felt hopeless. And they had priests that were now dealing with 5 times as many parishioners as they had been before. None of the staff has time, and they're like, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And so I was like, all right, let me write like a guidebook for here's if you don't know what to do, here's what to do. Here's a framework. It's called the 4 floors. It's a framework that I implemented it at my last 3 parishes, and it's been successful. Um, I say I, but it was really we. I got everyone on board and then we
Hmm.
did it. But it's a framework that you don't have to like plaster it up in the parish hall and have a committee meeting to talk about what your four floors are. You can just like here are the four things every parish has to do. Which one is your parish missing? Go do it.
Hmm.
And it gives simple ideas for how to do it, simple, tactics for when you inevitably meet
Hmm.
resistance from your parish or from other people. How do you get people on board? What kind of things can you do? And it also tries to break people out of that idea that parish ministry is done by either priests or paid staff, which is kind of the
Hmm.
new clericalist idea, that
Right.
clericalism is that the priests are solely responsible for the mission of the church. This new clericalism is the priests and the bishops are responsible, but so are the lay, the official lay
Workers.
people like staff
Hmm.
or even like super volunteers, um, even volunteers, right? It's like I can't do anything until I'm an official, fingerprinted volunteer. It's like, well, no, there's so many things that you can do, even if you're not an official person at the church,
Hmm.
because you are the parish, not the institution. And so that's why I wrote the book, was I saw there was a need, people wanted to do things, and
Hmm.
very few people were talking about how.
I think one of the things that you do very well is speaking about how it is that we as lay people can do things without, quote, the pastor's permission.
Hmm.
So many people are like, oh, I have a great idea. I got to talk to Father. And what, having worked, as you have on parish staff, and there's no intentionality or wanting to disregard ideas, but there's so much that's going on. It's like Father's like, I don't have time for that idea,
Hmm.
and so it's something of where it's like it doesn't go anywhere. When it's something of where it's like, you want to get together and pray the rosary and start family rosary groups, well, nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Yeah.
And I think so often people don't know that we are empowered by virtue of our baptism to do exactly that. But for someone who might be out there and then they've had this great idea, what would be your first? And I know you covered it in the book, but what would be kind of the first kind of couple of things that you would invite them to do if they are looking to get going?
Let me check the back of the book so I make sure I'm remaining consistent. I think I did like, yeah, okay, how to start this week. So I would say your great idea, if do it if that's what's on your heart, absolutely. But I would definitely say first diagnose what's missing. So like there's
Mhm.
four floors. The parish has to do four things: help people meet each other, help people meet Jesus, help people learn the faith, and help people share the faith. Help people grow in the faith, help people share the faith. Um, your great idea might be a great idea, but it might be redundant. It might be doing something the parish is already doing. And if that's what you want to do, by all means, go ahead and do it. But for the greater good of the parish, I would say, or the common good, rather. It's a more Catholic
Mhm.
idea. Look at the parish and say, okay, what's actually missing?
Mhm.
And then discuss. So step two is discuss. Start having conversations with people. Hey, I've noticed that we're not teaching our parishioners how to share the faith. What are some ways you think we could do that? Like, start finding people that are thinking the same thing as you, and then get them on board. Like, start having conversations, have dinner with people, have coffee with people, and talk. How can we solve this problem? Because in many hands make light work. And then
Mhm.
finally decide how to fill the gap. So that it's diagnose, discuss, decide. What are we gonna do? Um, and there's some diagnostic tools in the book at each floor. In part two of the book, I talk about diagnostic tools for how to check and see, is my parish doing XYZ well? There's a bunch of traps. A lot of parishes think they're great on community. Um, because they have a fish fry during Lent and because they have a fall
Mhm.
festival. And then, I tell this story about one parish I worked at. We had this food festival every year. And I was asking the guy who ran it, I was like, what's the point of this? Why are we doing this? And he's like, well, it builds community. And I said, okay, well, I sat here, most of the people who came got to go orders. So
Mhm.
if it's for community, why are we even doing to go orders for
Mhm.
the for the community building thing? He's like, well, it's a fundraiser. I was like, well,
Is it a
the
fundraiser?
worst, if you're going to start a business with the business with the worst margins is food. So I don't imagine that it's making much money. Um, what is this for? So a lot of parishes are in that boat. And so, I say, okay, instead of just like arguing about it, let's look at actual facts. Let's do the handshake test. When you're go to a social event, sit in the corner, how many people are shaking hands? If no
Mm-hmm.
one's shaking hands, no one's meeting people or seeing people they don't often see. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, you typically don't shake hands with your son when you've been hanging out with them for the last day. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's different diagnostic tools like that to see how good your parish is at filling each of these 4 floors. And so that's to help you diagnose. And then you start discussing. Talk to the guy who runs the food festival. Be like, hey, is the point of this to help people meet each other? I've noticed they aren't really doing that. What do you think are some ways we can fix that? Et cetera. Or even like maybe you notice that people aren't really shaking hands after mass. Okay, the whole church has a problem with meeting people. You can't even meet people at the thing where we're supposed to, where we all see each other. Okay. Well, what can we do? Like, I can start inviting people over to my house after mass.
Mm-hmm.
We can start going out. We can start a young adult breakfast. We all go to Denny's after
Mm-hmm.
mass. We can start doing stuff like that. That's really simple and really easy. And over time, those things grow.
Mm-hmm.
And they grow to the point, it's a lot like starting a business. All of a sudden, it starts growing to the point where people have to take notice. It's so good it can't be ignored. That's a saying that
Right.
I like. It's developed to the point where the pastor's like asking you questions like, how are you guys? You're all these young people are hanging out after mass. How are you doing that? And that's
Mm-hmm.
when you start getting the institutional backing and the institutional support. Some
Mm-hmm.
friends of mine started a young adult group. That's exactly what happened. They started out in like the negative graces. Like they were sued by their parish. And then they kept at it. They kept building the young adult group, and now the bishop attends their annual retreat, right? Like they were
Mm-hmm.
so in the doghouse that there was legal action against them. And
Mm-hmm.
now they're such in such good graces that the bishop attends their events. Like it can happen. I hear a lot of people say like, well, there's too much resistance. I've seen it took a lot of work, it took a lot of effort, it took a lot of their lives, but they did it. It can be done. You just have to do what's in the book. You have to buy probably preferably around 100 copies of the book, and that's when you really start to get it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just kidding. And then you can do it.
No, I appreciate that. Um, you know, I know that you have run into on a personal level and a little bit more not institutional, but within Catholic sphere. You've run into a few stumbling blocks, in trying to get this message out.
Mhm.
Would you share a little bit about those and have you seen how the Lord is working in the midst of those?
Yeah, a lot of probably the best thing that could possibly happen to you if you're doing an independent book launch. I had on the day I announced the book launch, I had an article. I posted an article, and it went kind of viral, to
Mhm.
the point where I still get tagged in it today, even though it was like a month and a half ago. Um, I posted an article called "The Parish You Hate Might Need You." Bit of a provocative title that doesn't really it doesn't really fit the book. Like the book assumes that you're sticking with your parish, but this article was kind of it was a proposition. Consider
Mhm.
staying at the church that you're at and fixing it instead of running away and leaving. And that article was met with some criticism. I think some rightly. Like it wasn't a comprehensive article. I think I could have defined some terms better. But the message, I think the reaction against the message of, can it ended up starting a conversation of can this be fixed? Can the average Catholic church with aging populations and dwindling numbers, can it be fixed at all? And it started a conversation. A lot of people came down on the side of no, it's hopeless. We got to run. We got to form our little enclaves, 30 to 45 minutes away at most if we have to. We got to just give up on these parishes and let them die. And what was nice about that was it really put it in perspective for people of, oh, that's not that doesn't sound right. Like the I think it provided a good exaggerated case of what a lot of young Catholics are feeling, where they're feeling like, "Oh, I should just give up." And seeing people actually voice that opinion made a lot of people go, "Wait, no, we shouldn't give up. Hold on a second." It kind of shook them out of
Mhm.
their stupor a little bit. Like, oh wow, people have actual solutions, and it's not as hopeless as I thought. And that was kind of the reaction that I got from the middle, right? There were a lot of people that were very against what I was saying, and you can't hope to convince them. It's a
Mhm.
fool's errand, I've learned. But the people that were kind of on the fence, I think seeing the reaction kind of tipped them over this way, which is like, we can do something. It's not all hopeless. Sure, the priests don't do what we like and the bishops aren't this, that, or the other thing, but we can do something. We can band together and do it. And
Mhm.
I think that's what helped with the article. That was the pushback, not of the institutional church, but the pushback of the people. And I think we overcame that. And I think that's what helped the success of the book.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think if it did anything, um, it really did give hope to people out there that this is not a lost cause, and it is our church, and it's not like, oh, that excludes the bishops or the priests, or there's this us and them, but rather it's ours. And if we are faithful to our role as lay people and as the baptized, then it's going to be what God wants it to be. If we
Absolutely.
fully become the holy men and women he wants us to be, then it's gonna be a glorious example to everyone else around us. And then they'll be inspired to do the same. So uh, what are your hopes? You're just kind of early into, this, as you said, 6 weeks ago, with the launch of the book. But what are your hopes for the Save Our Parish book, and kind of a little bit of a movement you've got going on?
My hope is that I start to have more conversations with parishes. That's really what I want. I want this to be like a conversation starter, and I'd like to speak with pastors and with parish leaders that are feeling hopeless and having more conversations like this, so I can help build more tools and help give people more tools to do this. This is not my full-time job, and I don't know if I ever want it to be, because I think my perspective as family man, two kids, full-time regular job, and I work for a construction subcontractor, a friend of mine's business. And I think that gives me a perspective like the average Catholic. For a long time, my perspective was, well, why don't you pray every day? Okay, well,
Mhm.
Patrick, you work in a building that has a church attached to it. So that's not exactly, you can go to confession whenever you want to the priest next door. That's not really realistic expectations for the average layperson. Now that I have a better understanding of the life of the average lay Catholic, I hope to be able to speak to them on a more relatable level.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that's what I hope that comes out of this. I hope that I get more DMs like I've been getting from people who are doing the same thing. Um, you know, I hope I get to go talk to more parishes and parish missions and parish staff meetings and that sort of thing, and help people put these things into action. And then build tools. I'm actually working on a tool called Ministry OS.
Mhm.
It's an app that helps you organize your people, helps you build a ministry and keep track of everyone, attendance, budget, events,
Mhm.
content, all that stuff. Ministry-os.com if you want to check it out. I'm working on stuff like that. I haven't actually announced that anywhere, so we'll see how this goes. Um, yeah, you can go to ministry-os.com, do a free trial of that. But yeah, I'm hoping to do more things like that that help make it easier for everyday Catholics to live out their vocation to go make disciples.
Mm. Awesome. So you gave us one website where might
There's
people
many
be able to,
websites that I can give, yes.
yeah. So I was just going to ask that question. Where can people go and find the book? On Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can also go to saveyourparish.com,
Okay.
and that'll give you information on everything. If you want to, if you want to get the book, it'll take you to Amazon. If you want to get bulk orders, it's cheaper. It's $12 a book instead of the 17 on Amazon. And then if you want to do a parish workshop, you can get access to that too. And then Ministry-OS obviously is the other thing. So saveyourparish.com has everything for this kind of this world of parish improvement.
Yeah. You alluded to it a little bit about, when you're talking about your hopes for this. But what's been most rewarding for you in your journey to share this message with other people?
That text that I got from that person. So the first parish I ever did this at was my very first parish, Holy Spirit Parish in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania. And we started the third floor. There's four floors. The top one is three. The bottom one is the ground floor. That's a little confusing, but I think people get over it after they read the book.
Mhm.
Um, the third floor is evangelization, and I think it's the one thing that parishes have the most difficult time with. And so at this parish I was working at, we needed to build a third floor. And so there was a woman there who had a really big heart for evangelization. She loved it. And so I worked with her to build up a ministry called the evangelization team. And we did a kickoff and we did training. And we, every month we had like a meeting where we would do like mock conversations about evangelization. And we put together a plan to reach the, the disaffiliated members of our church. And that text, like seeing the results of what we put into place 6 years ago has already borne fruit. It reinforces like, wow, yeah, the stuff that I have in this book does work, and it has worked, and it will continue to work. It just takes a lot of time, and I think
Hmm.
that's the one thing that I hope people know is that Savior Parish is not a get rich quick scheme, but for evangelization. It's also not a diocesan framework. It's also not a diocesan like plan where it's, make a mission statement,
Hmm. Yeah.
start do alpha. It's not a cookie cutter program. It's a set of principles. It's a blueprint.
Hmm.
And you're going to fill in the architecture that you need. So that's been the really heartening thing is seeing the results from the book even like a week or so after it was published because this book is full of real world things that I saw done and did myself um that have worked, and so that's been the great thing is like kind of seeing like, oh yeah, it's true, all of it.
Yeah. How do you think this all of this has been helping you on your own journey be towards becoming a saint? Hmm.
I think I've been doing online posting for a decade now. And I think this the the little article going viral, the pushback that I got from like colleagues and friends and people in the online Catholic space, it's helped me it's helped me in a number of different ways, like spiritually. I think the biggest one is just being with Jesus while I work. That's been a reflection that keeps coming back. It's like I am working with Christ. I've had trouble in the past kind of formulating what my relationship with Jesus looks like. And I think the image of a co-laborer in the vineyard has been great. Equally yoked, like it's him, me and him are working together. And so I used to get very self-conscious about criticism, when I was in college and in high school and like have really this urge to prove myself. And now seeing like having the evidence of like this is what I've seen work and this is what I'm putting on paper. And if you disagree, that's fine. I know I'm working with Jesus and you might be too. Like you're walking with him and that's your, this is what he's calling you to do is to post about me. That's fine. That and I'm posting about this. Um so that's even though we're at cross purposes, God has ordained it for that to be the case. It's something good comes out of it in the end. So that's really where a lot of peace with the fraught online world of evangelization. It feels like God has said, like, Pat, okay, you've decided you're going to be here online posting. I'm going to give you the virtue and the grace you need to deal with it and not go insane. And not be constantly glued to your phone. I think that's a big one.
Any particular habit or practice that's helped you do exactly that? Mhm.
I mean, I found that a friend of mine said this a while ago. It's like it's not that when I use the internet less, I'm more happy. It's that when I'm happier, I use the internet less.
Mhm.
It's so like focusing on the happiness and like what God is calling me to do in the moment. Um, there's
Mhm.
the there's the God is found in the present, and so focusing on the present moment, like what is the work at hand, has been extremely helpful for dealing with being online at all. Um, because sometimes the thing to do in the present moment is write a Substack, respond to a comment, post a tweet. Sometimes that is the thing to do in the present moment, but very rarely is refreshing the feed and scrolling the thing to do in the present moment. Really rarely the thing to do in the present moment is check the comments, check the comments, check the comments, check the reviews, check the numbers. That's very rarely the thing to do in the present moment. And so focusing on the present moment has helped me stop doing those things. And
Mhm.
so I mean that goes for everything, check your email. That's sometimes you got to do that, but constantly refreshing, looking for the sale to come through or looking for, the final decision for that interview you went on. It's like that's very rarely the thing to do in the present moment. It's to be with your spouse, to be with your kids, to be with your friends, to be with people and to be in prayer. Like those are often the things you have to do. So focusing on the present moment, I think, has been the habit that I've tried to develop. I'm still working on it. It's really tough.
As we all are. And I'd say that that's probably a wonderful takeaway for all of us, especially when we're talking now. We're in the midst of the Lenten season, but definitely is a way for us to live our lives well and to do the work that the Lord has placed in front of us, whatever that might be. But I can't believe our time's already flown
I
by.
know it flew around. It's crazy.
So any final words for anybody that you'd like to share?
Yeah, if you read the book and you like it, please don't hesitate to reach out. Um, I love getting a lot of times people read books, they're like, "Oh, I want to reach out to the author. I want to talk to them and ask a question, but I don't know if I should."
Mhm.
Please do. Like DM me on Substack, X, my email is in the book. Like please send me questions and stuff because I get better at doing what I do if I hear from people who read the book. So, if you get the book, please let me know what you think. Leave a review or send me an email. I really want to hear from you.
Mm, well, and to track down that book, you can just go to saviorparish.com and make sure to do that. Go get a copy.
Can you believe that URL was available? It's crazy.
I would say it was ordained,
Amen.
for all time and place in the present moment. So awesome. Well, thank you again for your time, Patrick. It has been such a joy and such a pleasure. And
Absolutely.
for everyone out there, know my continued prayers for each and every one of you that you may be able to do whatever it takes. So together we can tell the master of death, not today. God bless.